love questions from the audience, so you can start commenting your questions now, or you can also add them as we go. I'll be right back on to welcome our guests to the show. Thanks for meeting us for coffee. Watco Logistics makes supply chains simple. Whether it's rail, road, river, ocean, or intermodal, they manage your supply chain with efficiency and care. From heavy haul trucking to e-commerce fulfillment, they tailor solutions that fit your business, no matter the size or the complexity. Watco combines smart technology with real human insight to keep your cargo moving and your operations running smoothly. You can learn more about their full suite of services at watco.com/logistics. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's a holiday. Actually, I realized as we were putting all this scheduling together this week. So I know for a lot of us in freight, we don't get Veterans Day off, but a lot of us have kids at home. So drop a comment if your kids are going to be listening in the background with you, or if they're running around. I know my son is here. So if we hear any loud, unexplainable noises, we're just going to pretend we didn't hear them from the other room. So a couple quick housekeeping announcements. Trimble Insight is next week in New Orleans. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I've never been, so I don't know if it's New Orleans, how there's a correct way to say it. So if somebody knows, you're going to have to correct me. But if you're going to be there, please let me know. We do have some open mic times on the podcast because the Meet Me for a Coffee podcast will be there. Producer Aaron, who's sitting behind the scenes right now, will be there. A lot of you guys have already met him. So come hang out with us and record some awesome podcast content. Let me know if you'll be there. And then the next conference after that we've been talking about for a long time, but now we have to talk about it like it's almost here, is Manifest, the future of logistics in Las Vegas. And so that is in February. I actually am not physically attending this year because I'm due to be having a baby in the end of January, but I will be still supporting and tuning in virtually for that conference. But I do have a discount code. I can save you guys $200 on your registration. So shoot me a message or drop a comment if you need the discount code for Manifest in Las Vegas. The full agenda is out, so you can go check it out, see if you guys think that is a conference for you. They've announced the headliner for the concert. Forgot who it is. It was someone cool. So go check that out. But let me know if you guys are going to be going. Would love to know, and save you $200 on that registration. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guests as you guys are jumping in. Thank you, Barbara, for that. I appreciate it. I'm going to bring Lynda on. And as you guys are getting in, go ahead and let us know if you're drinking coffee today. What are you drinking? And I was just thinking Starbucks has already swapped from like the pumpkin spice to the Christmas sugar cookie stuff. So if you guys are about that seasonal coffee, let us know too. How are you doing, Lynda? You are good. Your mic is good. Lynda, you're good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. You're on.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm on?
You're on.
Okay. I must have missed the first
You don't have to do any of the work. That's Aaron's magical. He just like pops people into places.
Perfect.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So Lynda told me today, just before we came on, she said this is her first podcast she's ever done. So I am honored that I get to be your first podcast experience. And I find it hard to believe because I'm really looking forward to all of the insights you have to share with us. So thanks for making the time.
Yeah, well, give me some grace.
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone thinks that podcasting is difficult, but we just like to come on and have a nice conversation. And so, if you guys in the comments know anyone who you think should be on a podcast, give them a shout out. You never know. It might be their moment to shine. Lynda, for anyone who is listening in that doesn't already know you, could you please give us a quick introduction about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to age myself. I started in logistics career roughly 30 years ago when a couple of years out of college, I joined BNSF shortly after merger. So 1996, I started with BNSF in what was one of the first classes of new hires they had when they consolidated their crew calling function and their dispatch into Topeka, Kansas. So spent a couple years there, moved into the purchasing group where I really kind of cut my teeth in all things logistics. Eventually became the director of logistics, managing all the company material spend. So think anything that is needed to run a railroad, safety supplies, maintenance items for rail cars, office supplies, anything to run the railroad. So it's truckload, LTL, parcel and air that I managed. And ironically, I did not even manage rail. It just wasn't a big part of that at the time. That many years ago. But anyway, fast forward in 2003, sorry, BNSF was looking for kind of a growth engine. Intermodal hadn't really, picked up until like 2007. And so they decided to buy a small brokerage that eventually became what is known today as BNSF Logistics. Some of that has since moved to JP Hunt Logistics, but BNSF Logistics, I'm sure most people know. I was tasked then to move into our marketing team or marketing organization and work on growth strategies for all things on how we were going to integrate this with the mothership, with BNSF, how we were going to grow this independent of that, as well as driving the M&A growth. So I spent 7 years on the logistics side there, 7 acquisitions, and 7 years later, I returned back to BNSF where I led a nationwide intermodal sales team for the last 4 years of my career at BNSF. So 19 total years. And then I had the opportunity in 2014 to come over and be on the forefront of starting a logistics program with a select group of industry folks that I had worked with at BNSF Logistics and for Watco. And that's where I'm at today. And I lead our sales and M&A activity for Watco.
Wow. So I'm going to show my inexperience and my lack of experience in the industry by saying I didn't realize that, people's familiarity or comfort with using intermodal was a more recent thing, I guess. As you talk about how the rails were actually buying logistics truckload programs because people weren't really fully embracing rail. And since the time I've been, in the space, it seems everyone's pretty happy and and confident with rail when it makes sense. So that's kind of neat to see that the progress that's been made across rail over the last 10 years, I would say.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Well, I know that. So before I ask my next question, because I know a little bit about Watco. Obviously, we have your logo up here. So I do have to say thank you so much because the Watco team has been sponsoring the podcast. I think for the last 6 months now, it's been an awesome time. And you guys do a little bit of everything. So I'm going to ask one, tell me a little bit more about all of the types of modes and services you guys touch. And then one of them in particular has like always snagged my interest. And you guys are kind of in a unique niche part of what I would say is probably a key contributor to inbound supply chains, maybe export supply chains as well. And that would be the barge space. So I want to get an update from you on that because I've never had someone come on the show who could speak to that. But first, kind of tell me a little bit about everything you guys do. We'll set the stage and then we'll jump into some niche market updates.
Yeah, so we've done a pretty good job over the last 11 years since I've here of getting the Watco brand out there. Most people knew us as a railroad. So Watco started in 1983. The founder, Dick Webb, he retired from the Kansas City Southern, now CPKC, and started in Boise Cascade in DeRidder, Louisiana, as an industrial switching company. We still do industrial switching today for private industries. We quickly evolved into a rail car mechanical repair shop. And then shortly after that, a couple years later, bought our first short line railroad from the Union Pacific. So if you fast forward, today we have 47 short line railroads. They're all branded as their individuals. So our very first one is the SKOL, and stands for Southeast Kansas Oklahoma line. And today we are the largest independent short line rail holding company with operations nationwide in Canada, Mexico, and we operate a railroad in Australia. So 7,500 miles of track, approximately 1.2 million carloads per year on our rail division, our short lines. A couple of years later, we evolved into terminals and ports. It's a logical evolution in that, companies that don't have rail access can then get rail access through terminals. So our terminals, we have 76 of them. They're a mix of rail, barge, and truck served terminals. 23 of them are barge served. Of course, all of them are truck served. That we predominantly handle bulk and break bulk and liquid through those terminals. Our flagship one, which is our Greensport terminal in Houston on the ship channel, we call it our flagship because it's our largest. It's 825 acres. We have 8 deep water berths, over 3 million square foot of warehouse space. It's got designated FTZ. It's rail served by all the class ones. So we do material handling, stevedoring, offload, staging, and storage there. So that kind of gives you an appreciation of the terminal. So if you think of Watco, as I like to put it, as 3 pillars, we have our short lines, we have our terminals and ports, and then logistics. So that's where I'm at, is on the logistics side. Of course, I sell all of the Watco services, and we are the asset light component of Watco. So like I said, in 2014, the second generation founder, who is now our chairman, Rick Webb, had been talking to the president now of Watco Logistics, Eric Wolf, and he had a vision. He said, we have a tremendous customer network. I want to offer a larger network of transportation services to our existing customers. I want to diversify. Watco's had been predominantly what we call a heat and eat portfolio. And so by bringing in consumer products and e-commerce and fulfillment, all that sort of stuff, we were able to diversify the portfolio. And then obviously we're for profit, so ultimately drive growth for Watco through a very capital light approach. And so if you go a little bit further, our services are they are unique. So we've got, all our assets that we can pull from. We move highway, which is about 50% of our business. Truck truck centric is kind of how we started. We move over 200,000 truckloads a year now. We do e-commerce and fulfillment, intermodal, rail, logistics, project cargo, and international. And yeah, I can go into more details on all those because it
Well,
is.
let me know more about, I mean, how does one decide barge logistics is something that you want to also dip your toes into? And I don't want to, I know we don't need to spend too much time on it, but maybe thinking like, can you tell me more about what's going on in just in general? Let's talk about the barge logistics space and also maybe kind of blend that with rail logistics, kind of on that bulk or inbound side. And so I'd like to kind of hear from you just as someone who gets to see so much customer activity across those spaces that a lot of us don't touch as much. What has been going on in the last few months? What kind of trends are shaping that space right now when we're talking that's pretty far upstream, like inbound supply chain?
Sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Barge is the newest to me as well. We bought a barge logistics company. We still have it branded as Midship Logistics. They're one of the premier barge logistics companies in the marketplace that contract with all the barge owners, the asset owners. But I quickly realized that there is definitely an applicability for barge. It accounts for about 100 billion in economic output, and it's the most efficient mode of transportation, predominantly bulk and break bulk. But if you consider how much you can move in one barge versus what you move in a truck, one barge is the equivalent to like 60 truckloads of product. And if you equate that to rail cars, it's, one barge is equivalent to 15 rail cars. So you move a lot of product. It's very applicable for things like U.S. grain exports. Barge moves approximately 60% of our U.S. grain exports going for export, and then rail makes the predominant rest of that. So it's a very efficient mode for that. The largest product that moves via barge is petroleum, ag fertilizers, again, bulk, think bulk, break bulk. So that's kind of how barge is efficient for customers. In terms of trends, of course, I'm sure this will come up a lot because we're all impacted in the logistics and transportation space. Is tariffs. We've certainly seen that impact the environment in barge, trade restrictions and quotas. For instance, the biggest one that if you've watched the news lately was grain and soybean exports had come to a complete halt. I mean, there was just none. And the announcement, that just happened, I don't know, a week and a half ago between Trump and President Xi of China coming to a 3-year trade deal is very encouraging because that, again, 60%.
I saw that. I think it specifically addressed the soybean exports to China. And so they made a commitment to purchase soybeans. And so as I'm assuming we'll see hopefully some movement in our inventory here for the farmers who have the soybean stock that they're sitting on to move that out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very encouraging. And then again, all related to tariffs or uncertainty, but shippers, much like truck and much like ocean, forward in advance of tariffs started pushing product forward for distribution and moving it to forward placing FTZs to kind of wait out the outcome of tariffs. Now that has slowed down because the product is needed, whether there's a tariff or not on certain commodities. But that was definitely a trend that we saw and we experienced on the barge side.
I had to educate myself on this when this was kind of first coming up. And so FTZ is like free trade zone, right? And so the deal is if you bring your freight in as an import bonded and you put it into like a FTZ or a bonded warehouse, you don't pay tariffs until you pull it out of those warehouses. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. So it was kind of giving them like this holding space while tariff announcements were moving back and forth to say, okay, we at least got it here. It's in America, but now we're going to wait till like the ideal moment to move it out of these FTZ or bonded spaces.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely an impact. I know I just had released my market update report yesterday, and I wrote that, we have some type of, I don't know what we call it at this point, clarity at least around the results of the Trump Asia tour and agreements with some of these countries. Um, and I think people are going to do their best to move forward making decisions based on what's happened. But I would say that we haven't removed all of the uncertainty. And then I also mentioned the IEPA case right now with the Supreme Court. Everyone's saying we won't have a final decision until January at the earliest, maybe into the spring. And so I feel like that put everyone on pause again. And we're all kind of just like, well, okay, something is going to be
Yeah.
decided and it's several months out. So now we all just don't make any big decisions and we kind of sit and wait. And so I expect that whatever that decision that comes out in the spring will have some type of reaction. People will have to react to that, whatever is decided as the plan
That's
going forward. So I'm sure we'll see some supply chain shifting come Q1 into Q2 as a result of how this Supreme Court case plays out.
Yep.
So,
Agree.
Okay. The next thing I want to ask you about is, again, this is like, I have limited experience on the inbound side of supply chains. I was never really big in the rail space, but I've had the privilege of getting to know some of our nation's Fortune 500 shippers and kind of having conversations with them about their supply chains. And I've always kind of heard this chatter that there is a lack of strong visibility across some of these organizations when it comes to spaces like rail, especially maybe like in the bulk or transload or their inbound materials that are coming into their plants. I actually had one shipper one time tell me, he was like, we don't know how it gets there. It just gets there. There's some lady somewhere who knows who to tell someone and it shows up. And he was talking like, this was a major food producer talking about one of their inbound commodities to one of their manufacturing plants. And I just thought that was so funny because, we live on the logistics side every day. And if you don't have like perfect visibility on your truckloads these days, it's like, what are you doing? But then I just hear such a different story. So can you talk to me more about what's the progress we're making on the inbound side? What's available to people? That conversation, by the way, was like not even a year ago. So I know that there are still major gaps right now. I'm not talking about like years ago. So what's out there that people maybe don't know about yet, or what are the capabilities that people are trying to develop and drive forward in this space to bring the same level of visibility that we have on our domestic logistics to more of this rail and inbound side of the supply chain?
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely talk to that. That's a big, it's probably one of our fastest growing segments of our business is rail logistics. And visibility, the technology enabled approach is very important. There's about a handful of different rail visibility tools in the marketplace. I've used them in some capacity for customers, or we've used them before we settled in on our preferred visibility tool for customers. And so they're mostly, the names like IntelliTrans, Transite, Bork Logistics. The one we use is Telegraph. We prefer it because of the advanced analytics that it has. So it's got some predictive analytics for customers. But we use it as an enabler for providing a broader set of services for our customers. So it absolutely provides visibility. It's relying on the data that we get from the railroads, and RailLink is another source of data. But Telegraph also ingests other data feeds like short line railroad data, in terminal data where it's available, to make it more robust for our customers. So we provide daily reporting, real-time, management, and that's key. We've got a whole team of experts around the space. So it's not just the visibility, it's what do you do with the information? I can send a report to you every day and show that a rail car has been sitting at a siding for a week, but that's not helping the customer because they're still going to get demurrage on that rail car unless somebody is out there actively working that pipeline every single day. So that's how we've approached rail logistics. It's helped our customers with rail cycle improvements, rail car cycle improvements, and reduced demurrage. So think large shippers that have their own private fleet and or use the rail controlled assets for inbound shipments into their place. So that's been probably our fastest growing. We've found a niche somewhat with the food and industry or food and beverage side, where we've brought on a couple customers this year that are moving with us. And that's helped us evolve into, them gaining confidence now that they have a control over their rail that, like you said, customers, through attrition and just the pure lack of understanding of rail, it can be intimidating and it can be costly. And so having somebody that's, your partner that's providing you that visibility and the hands-on approach has been really successful. And we expect that to continue to be a trend and certainly a focus for Watco.
From what you guys are hearing from customers, and maybe the answer here is no, but there's been a lot of headlines lately in the rail space. Like rail is already, we don't have a lot of rail providers, and there's been consolidation that we already saw. Was that last year? I think that was finalized. Yep. And now we have this announcement of a potential merger again. So are these things that cause concerns across shippers, or is it just like, okay, it is what it is, rail's changing again? Or do you guys, hear any voiced concerns about what that'll mean for, customers' rail supply chains?
Yeah, so it's hard to know where it'll land. And you can read positioning statements by, other class 1 railroads that are opposed to it, or shippers that are either opposed or for it. And that'll obviously weigh into the STB's, the Surface Transportation Board's, decision to allow the big mega UP-NS merger. So essentially what that'll mean is that UP-NS will have a transcontinental, coast to coast seamless product, which should imply better service. Again, BNSF or Watco does not have really a position because we are a short line and we work with all the class 1s. They're all our partners. And what we've historically seen in consolidation is that it provides opportunity for us, whatever that means, where, perhaps the UP and the NS with a more consolidated network looks at shedding some non-efficient lines. Therefore, they'll shut them off to folks like us that can serve those lines and be a connector to them. It's interesting to see also then how other railroads have kind of answered the call to that. You probably saw BNSF and the CSX have announced a service alliance. So not an acquisition, but an alliance where they will essentially accomplish the same thing. And so, and that's not the only one. We can talk about, all the different partnerships that are now forming for services in and out of Mexico. So it's hard to know. Watco doesn't really have an opinion. We just want to be there because inevitably something is going to come out of it, and we need to be there to help our customers one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned Mexico. I have to ask, I'm sure that has been a growing space for you guys because you mentioned you guys service Mexico and Canada, probably both on the logistics and your asset side. Before I move on, Sean, thank you for your stats on the soybeans. That was helpful. I did see that. Lynda and I, actually, fun fact, Lynda and I are in the same city. We both live in Tonganoxie, Kansas, which most people don't know where it is. We have lots of beef around here, and we're in Kansas, and I'm going to guess I know nothing about beef market and pricing. Lynda, do you happen to know anything, or is that a no from you too?
Yeah, I'm not real close. I mean, I know that it seems like it has obviously increased, but I'm not very familiar with beef pricing.
I would say I have followed a little bit. I would say it's very politicized right now. I have noticed that where Congress is hearing some things from American farmers, and I've tried to follow along that because supposedly we are importing a lot of beef from other countries at lower costs while adding a lot more regulation here to our domestic beef producing efforts. So that's all I know on that. But Sean, sidebar with me because I'm actually interested. Randomly had been following some threads on that. So shoot me a message. Maybe we could figure something out there. As far as Mexico goes, we know that I think it was like Mexico surpassed China in the last couple of years in the amount of trade that they're doing with the US. We have all this craziness going on with tariffs. Thankfully, the USMCA agreement exempts a lot of what's coming out of Mexico. So people are still finding ways to do business between Mexico and the US. What have you guys noticed across any mode, full truckload, warehousing near the border, or rail logistics across the border, as far as what your clients are doing now? It's been a few years since people started shifting to Mexico. So I feel like now the infrastructure has become more established and we're more like in routine. So where does that sit as of right now?
Yeah, so it's consistently in the news, new facilities and infrastructure is being built in Mexico. And so if it's not on somebody's radar, it needs to be on somebody's radar. It's absolutely on our radar. We have a cross-border solutions group. We predominantly focused on intermodal and truck. We also move rail cars in and out of Mexico quite frequently for more industrial products. But our intermodal product line, just for comparison, our domestic intermodal grew about 2.8% year over year. And we're seeing almost a 21% growth on our Mexico cross-border freight. So, it's becoming easier for customers to get it into Mexico. And I touched on it a bit, but the railroads, they look at this as an absolute growth engine for them, or their next, growth engine. The railroads, carloads continue to go down. You may have heard the term, the coal hole. Coal fell off quite drastically while, it's coming back some with this administration, but never will return to the heights that it was. So they're looking for what's that next growth, and Mexico definitely is a growth engine. So the UP, they partnered with the CN and the Ferromax to be able to provide a north-south product all the way in and out of Mexico. CPKC, they can do that by themselves now with the merger of the Canadian Railroad and the service that KCS already had into Mexico. And then BNSF is partnering with the FXE to move products in and out of Mexico. So as a non-asset-based provider, we're an IMC. We use roll control assets and other people's assets to put together a door-to-door product. And that's been a huge growth opportunity. And it's going to continue to be a growth opportunity for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So cool. I think it's actually kind of cool how we have, these some of the oldest businesses in our nation are these rail lines, and how they're really starting to get very competitive and start evolving and innovating. And I like to see how that's driving the reaction across the logistics sector too. I know I've seen their announcements of now they're like blatantly calling it on their website, like, we compete with Expedite OTR service, and we now have these like California to Chicago lanes open, and California to, maybe it was Memphis, but they're calling it like an Expedite move, in California to Vegas on these rail lines, where they're blatantly coming forward saying, hey, we are directly competitive, adequate service to your experience with a full truckload shipment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, back to Mexico, it's actually a better service product in and out of Mexico, because the product clears, depending on going north or south, clears at the intermodal ramp going northbound. So it doesn't stop at the border. And if trucks are spending days sitting at the border to get clearance. So it's a faster product. It's a more reliable product, and it's a safer product, because if the train's not stopping, you're not getting the same theft that you would realize, in a cross-border service. And so it's interesting, because that's part of the attraction, is that to intermodal, is that it actually really is in most cases, a better service product than truck.
Yeah. I feel like we kind of just coincidentally answered part of this question, at least, that Sean had asked when that conversation with long haul shipping OTR possibly seeing capacity constraints to be present due to drivers exiting the market. How does rail plan expect to take on additional work previously supported by truck? So one, I feel like we just talked about how they cleared through their backlog that they had experienced during the craziness of the pandemic, and now a lot of them are openly promoting and advertising this expedited experience that's supposed to be similar to or better than your full truckload experience. I would say that I moderated a panel, Sean, in Chicago just last month, and I got to moderate a panel on cross-border logistics, which is cool because I don't know as much about that space, but I had 4 experts, and 2 of them were physically in Mexico. They were working on the Mexican side of the logistics space, and they said that there's been a lot of investments in like rail and ramp infrastructure in Mexico. And actually, what the lady that I had on my panel mentioned that they're struggling in Mexico to recruit enough drivers to move on the Mexico side. So they're actually like noticing that and investing in rail because, like you said, Lynda, there is also that security measure. They're able to, add security to the rail yards and the ramps and try to, increase, at least have security there. It's hard to have security on all the roads through Mexico, and that's where you see those escort services come in and all of the risks that are associated with that. But it was reassuring to hear that Mexico has noticed the opportunity and the Mexican government is investing in the rail infrastructure and the partnership with the cross-border transportation.
Yeah, certainly. And then, I mean, you asked, or you were talking about just beyond Mexico, again, I'm not an expert in this, but I listened to your podcast, and Dr. Miller was talking about the impact of, non-domicile and English proficiency and the impact that's just going to have on the trucking industry as capacity falls out. And certainly over the last couple of years, trucks have been, cheap and capacity has been, great, but there is going to be, I wish that we all had a magic 8-ball to tell us when, but there's going to be a capacity tightening, and rail is a viable option. Over the last couple or 2 years, intermodal has been down year over year because trucks were so cheap.
How easy it is to get a truck, how cheap it is to get a truck, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Lynda. I think like rail is ready and positioned to pick up some of the volume. And I know we talk about like indicators where LTL tonnage is down too. And so when markets start getting tight in truckload, we see those signs because you see LTL volumes start to pick back up. Rail volumes will start to tick back up because people start looking. I mean, truckload's convenient, right? Like it's one, you can pick something up, put it on a dedicated truck, no moving, go, have tracking, use your preferred partners, whatever the case may be. LTL, there's more touches, there's, more movement, a little less visibility, longer transit. We used to say the same about rail, poor visibility, longer transit. It's evolving, which is exciting. But all that being said, people tend to drive to the full truckload market to push their volumes there when it's so loose like it has been. So
yep. Absolutely.
I would agree with you. I would say that we'll start to see those volumes in intermodal pick back up and intermodal take more center stage as the market tightens. When the market tightens,
yeah, we're starting to see a lot.
And we're working on trying to predict that and catch the front end of that curve. But yeah, I mean, I would say at this point we're all kind of embracing our very non-peak season and moving into a slower Q1, and then hopefully we get some good clarity around tariffs and international trade, and manufacturing has some type of revival, or housing markets or something. So we're looking into the new year. On that note, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, but what are you guys, when you're talking with customers right now, when you guys have the opportunity to sit down with your customers and have meetings or just catch up, what are some like pieces of advice that you're giving to your shippers as they're kind of wrapping up their year, or already a lot of people use Q4 to forward plan the next year. So what are some things you guys are hearing, or what advice are your teams giving right now?
Yeah. So, the big one for us is optionality. Customers want optionality. They want flexibility. There's a lot of customers that, as we talked about earlier, that don't understand rail and how rail can work within their supply chain. So we talk a lot about, all the different optionalities that are out there, the end-to-end solutions that, that we can offer in the marketplace. And I think we have a pretty unique service portfolio. So we talk everything, right? We talk intermodal, we talk rail, highway, barge, project cargo, international freight forwarding, the whole gamut when we're talking to customers. And just being aware, and as you talk to and I talk to, the shift in the truckload market. We talk a lot on my team about customer experience. And that's a big push for Watco. It has been since it was founded, the customer first foundation principles. Again, optionality, key differentiated, service, and relationships matter. So especially in this market, people were staying with incumbency, but if you are loyal to your shipper, and your shippers will become loyal to you as well. And so as things shift, the relationship really does matter. And then I guess, we didn't talk much about e-commerce and fulfillment, but things are only getting faster. Things are only getting more convenient. And so
Yeah.
we've experienced very rapid growth on the e-commerce and fulfillment side of our business. And you may not, again, think of a rail-centric, barge-centric company, logistics company, but we went from 0 to 17 million packages over the last 8 years that we've handled for e-fulfillment. We manage 27 e-fulfillment centers where we do sort, segment, and we deliver 75, it's probably more than 75 now, 75,000 packages a day direct to consumers and businesses. So, it's amazing all the different businesses that need this now, even non-traditional ones that you wouldn't think of, that are just trying to get product into some place that they can get it closer to the consumer. We handle through those 27 facilities, just kind of as an offshoot, we handle dog food for Hub Grub, for example. And so I think just throwing the stuff out there, listening to the customer, they're going to tell you the challenges they're facing. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
I love that. Shippers were always my best teachers. So when I was in sales, I just, you ask so many questions and you try to learn really about end-to-end supply chain. And it's such a cool opportunity when you hear them. I used to ask lots of questions about services that maybe I didn't even necessarily offer, because I was like, I need to understand how this all fits together. And so it's very cool, because we obviously we do different things, and you have the service providers and you have the actual movers of the shippers, the movers of the goods. And everybody has a cool view into like how things work, and you can understand it by asking questions. So well, Lynda, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You didn't act like it was your first time. I mean, you're like a seasoned pro. So thank you for being here today. If anyone is currently not connected with you, or they'd like to talk to you more about something or learn a little bit more, ask questions, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, currently, obviously we're on the podcast. You can connect with me via LinkedIn. You can email at logistics@watco.com. That goes directly to me. Or visit our website, watco.com/logistics. I'd be more than happy to provide those channels, provide my direct contact and talk to anybody.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone who was here today. Thanks for the input and the questions. Absolutely. We are happy to be able to have a conversation with everyone. So we appreciate you guys listening in. If you guys are listening back to this later, or you're listening to it on any of our podcasting platforms, be sure to come find the event on LinkedIn, drop a comment, ask us a question, send a message to Lynda or myself on LinkedIn, send us a connection request. We'd love to talk to you guys and hear your thoughts or comments and questions that you thought of during this conversation. So Lynda, thank you for making the time today.
Thank you, Samantha. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you to everyone else for meeting us for coffee today.
Thanks so much for meeting us for coffee. I'm so excited to be partnered with Watco as our show sponsor. Not only was Watco founded in my home state of Kansas, but the solutions they provide are, in my honest opinion, unmatched. If you have questions about Watco, you can scan this QR code to connect, check out the link in the episode description, or you can shoot me a message on LinkedIn directly, and I'm happy to talk more. If you enjoyed today's show, I'd love if you could leave a rating on your platform of choice. We'll see you next time.